Sixth part. Crime and Punishment, Chapter 1, of course. Okay, I'll be posting these videos also on YouTube. Stormer Show, same name. And should be able to find it there even if Twitch doesn't save the video. I'm traveling later this week and I'll try to, I think, continue to post episodes, but if not, I guess I can always post a recap when I get back. I'm not sure that I'll take my laptop traveling with me. I don't think I will. Well, maybe. I might take my old laptop. New laptop, though, definitely not. Okay. Here we go. Crime and Punishment, Part 6, Chapter 1. A strange period began for Raskolnikov. It was as though a fog had fallen upon him and wrapped him in a dreary solitude from which there was no escape. Recalling that period long after, he believed that his mind had been clouded at times, and that had continued so with intervals till the final catastrophe. As we might recall, Katerina Ivanovna passed away in the last chapter. She had a pretty messed up ending. She got kicked out. She was trying to scrape some money together with a street performer act with her kids, and she was getting increasingly frustrated. And then she succumbs to tuberculosis, passes away. Pretty sad end, honestly. He was convinced that he had been mistaken about many things at that time, for instance, as to the date of certain events. Anyway, when he tried later on to piece his recollections together, he learned a great deal about himself from what other people told him. He'd mixed up incidents and had explained events as due to circumstances which existed only in his imagination. At times he was a prey to agonies of morbid uneasiness, amounting sometimes to panic. But he remembered too moments, hours, perhaps whole days of complete apathy, which came upon him as a reaction from his previous terror and might be compared with the abnormal insensibility sometimes seen in the dying. He seemed to be trying in that latter stage to escape from a full and clear understanding of his position. Certain essential facts which required immediate consideration were particularly irksome to him. How glad he would have been to be free from some cares, the neglect of which would have threatened him with complete, inevitable ruin. He was particularly worried about Sverdlov. He might be said to be permanently thinking of Sverdlov, his sister's potential partner, I believe. He came to the rescue of Sonia and her sisters in the last chapter as well, heroically. In the time of Sverdlov's two menacing and unmistakable words in Sonia's room at the moment of Katerina Ivanovna's death, the normal working of his mind seemed to break down. But although this new fact caused him extreme uneasiness, Raskolnikov was in no hurry for an explanation of it. At times, finding himself in a solitary and remote part of the town, in some wretched eating house, sitting alone lost in thought, hardly knowing how he had come there, he suddenly thought of Sverdlov. He recognized suddenly, clearly and with dismay, that he ought at once to come to an understanding with that man, to make what terms he could. Walking outside the city gates one day, he positively fancied that they had fixed a meeting there. He was waiting for Sverdlov. Another time he woke up before daybreak, lying on the ground under some bushes, and could not at first understand how he had come there. But during the 2 or 3 days after Katerina Ivanovna's death, he had 2 or 3 times met Sverdlov at Sonia's lodging, where he had gone aimlessly for a moment. They exchanged a few words and made no reference to the vital subject, as though they were tacitly agreed on not to speak of it for a time. Katerina Ivanovna's body was still lying in the coffin. Sverdlov was busy making arrangements for the funeral. Yeah, Sverdlov's really come through. I'll say that. Sonia, too, was very busy. At their last meeting, Sverdlov informed Raskolnikov that he had made an arrangement, a very satisfactory one for Katerina Ivanovna's children, that he had, through certain connections, succeeded in getting hold of certain personages by whose help the 3 orphans could be at once placed in very suitable institutions. But the money he had settled on them had been of great assistance, as it is much easier to place orphans with some property than destitute ones. He said something too about Sonia and promised to come himself in a day or two to see Raskolnikov, mentioning that he would like to consult with him, that there were things they must talk over. This conversation took place in the passage on the stairs. Sverdlov looked intently at Raskolnikov and suddenly, after a brief pause, dropping his voice, asked, "But how is it, Rodion Romanovich? You don't seem yourself. You look and you listen, but you don't seem to understand. Cheer up. We'll talk things over. I'm only sorry. I have so much to do with my own business and other people's. Ah, Rodion Romanovich," he added suddenly, "what all men need is fresh air more than anything." He moved to one side to make way for the priest and server who were coming up the stairs. They had come for the requiem service. By Sverdlov's orders, it was sung twice a day punctually. Sverdlov went his way. Raskolnikov stood still a moment, thought, and followed the priest into Sonia's room. He stood at the door. They began quietly, slowly, and mournfully, singing the service. From his childhood, the thought of death and the presence of death had something oppressive and mysteriously awful. It was long since he had heard the requiem service. There was something else here as well, too awful and disturbing. He looked at the children. They were all kneeling by the coffin. Polenka was weeping. Behind them, Sonia prayed softly, and as it were, timidly weeping. What up, Sil? I gotta plug in my phone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow on Twitch, sub on YouTube. Yeah, very sad. House Marmeladov, there's no doubt about that. But, yeah. Sverdlov's helping him out. For sure. Good lad. Behind them, Sonia prayed, softly and as it were, timidly weeping. These last 2 days, she hasn't said a word to me. She hasn't glanced at me, Raskolnikov thought suddenly. There he goes again, thinking about himself. He did that quite a bit. What was it, 2 chapters ago, when he was trying to confess to Sonia. The sunlight were bright in the room. The incense rose in clouds. The priest read, "Give rest, O Lord." Raskolnikov stayed all through the service. As he blessed them and took his leave, the priest looked around strangely. After the service, Raskolnikov went up to Sonia. She took both his hands and let her head sink on his shoulder. Yeah, it seems like Sonia's already forgiven him for the murders. But is he going to be able to evade the law? I don't know. This slight friendly gesture bewildered Raskolnikov. It seemed strange to him that there was no trace of repugnance, no trace of disgust, no tremor in her hand. It was the furthest limit of self-abnegation, at least, so he interpreted it. Yeah, Sonia is very different from Raskolnikov. They're very different characters. Raskolnikov is like depressed, moody, antisocial. They've both been through hard times, but I would say in spite of that, Sonia is still very kind, caring, and compassionate. She's I would say in spite of all the bad things that happened to her, she's probably the most kind-hearted character there is. Like, I would say she might even be more kind than Sverdlov. Like, she just keeps trying to help people. Self-abnegation is the denial or abasement of oneself. think it's the opposite of being self-absorbed. Yeah, again, like, Sonya is very selfless. Like that, like if I could use a word to describe her character, like selfless. She's like, everything that she does is for the benefit of others. Like her family's not doing well, so she turns to prostitution to support them. Her mom's out on the street because she just got kicked out, and she's trying to get money together, and she's like trying to help her mom get her stuff together and get off the street. Like I probably feel the worst for her character, Sonya. Sonya said nothing. Raskolnikov pressed her hand and went out. He felt very miserable. Not much uncommon there. If it had been possible to escape to some solitude, he would have thought himself lucky, even if he had to spend his whole life there. But although he had almost always been by himself of late, he had never been able to feel alone. Sometimes he walked out of the town on the high road, to the high road. Once he had even reached a little wood, but the lonelier the place was, the more he seemed to be aware of an uneasy presence near him. It did not frighten him, but greatly annoyed him, so that he made haste to return to the town, to mingle with the crowd, to enter restaurants and taverns, to walk in busy thoroughfares. There he felt easier and even more solitary. Like, he only feels alone when he's surrounded by people. It's like, when I interpret this to mean. Like, I go to crowded places so I can feel by myself. One day at dusk, he sat for an hour listening to songs in the tavern, and he remembered that he positively enjoyed it. But at last, he had suddenly felt the same uneasiness again, as though his conscience smote him. Here I sit listening to singing. Is that what I ought to be doing? He thought. Yet he felt at once that he was not the only cause of his uneasiness. There was something requiring immediate decision, but it was something he could not clearly understand or put it into words. Could it have something to do with the fact that you murdered 2 people and still have not come clean? Yeah, I don't know. He's still on the lam. He's like, I don't care. It was a hopeless thing. No, better the struggle again. Better Porfiry again. Porfiry Petrovich Luzhin, or Sverdlov. Better some challenge again, some attack. He's actually pushing them both away and declined both of them courting his sister. Like, he doesn't want either one of them to get with his sister. But so far, there's been a pretty big contrast between Luzhin and Sverdlov. We kind of see that with how they interact with other characters. Like, just in terms of how they both interact with Sonya, right? Like, Luzhin tries to take advantage of Sonya. He invites her to his place. He gives her like $10 or something like that, and then as she's leaving, he slips like $100 into her pocket, and he tries to make the case that she stole it. And then, in sharp contrast, Sverdlov, he notices that Katerina Ivanovna's passed away. He sees that their family's not doing well, and then he tries to help them. And yeah, I mean, there's pretty much nothing in it for him. Like there's, other than like looking good to everyone else, there's pretty much nothing in it for him. Like, I don't even think Dunya knows about it, so maybe he's just doing it for a good deed. Like, do his good deed for the day, something. He went out of the tavern and rushed away almost at a run. The thought of Dunya and his mother suddenly reduced him to almost panic. That night he woke up before morning among some bushes in Krestovsky Island, trembling all over with fever. He walked home, and it was early morning when he arrived. After some hours' sleep, the fever left him, but he woke up late, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I can almost relate. He remembered that Kenner Ivanovna's funeral had been fixed for that day. He was glad that he was not present at it. Nastasia brought him some food. He ate and drank with appetite, almost with greediness. His head was fresher and he was calmer than he had been for the last 3 days. He even felt a passing wonder at his previous attacks of panic. The door opened and Razumhin came in. "Ah, he's eating. Then he's not ill," said Razumhin. Took a chair and sat down at the table opposite Raskolnikov. Razumhin, like ever the good friend, like he's always checking on Raskolnikov. He's like, "Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you're good, homie." Like Raskolnikov is like bedridden, like he is like very sick after he commits the murders. And Razumhin visits him. He's like, "Yeah, I got you a new wardrobe." Shows up at Razumhin's place. He's like, "Hope just wanted to check on you, Raskolnikov. Hope you're doing good." He was troubled and did not attempt to conceal it. He spoke with evident annoyance, without hurry or raising his voice. He looked as though he had some special fixed determination. Like Razumhin's like what we would call like a type A. Like he's one of the only friends that Raskolnikov was able to make in university. Which says a lot. Like, "Listen," he began resolutely. And, when his mom and sister came into town, he was taking care of them. You could say he had motive because he's trying to get with Dunya, but I still think he's a nice guy. "It's clear to me that I can't make head or tail of it. Please don't think I've come to ask you questions. I don't want to know. Hang it. If you've been telling me your secrets, I dare say I shouldn't stay to listen. I should go away cursing. I've only come to find out once..." Mosquitoes. Eat them. "I've only come to find out once for all whether it's a fact that you're mad. There's a conviction in the air that you're mad, or very nearly so. I admit I've been disposed to that opinion myself, judging from your stupid, repulsive, and quite inexplicable actions, and from your recent behavior to your mother and sister. Only a monster or a madman can treat them as you have, so you must be mad. When did you see them last?" "Just now." "Haven't you seen them since then?" "What have you been doing with yourself? Tell me, please. I've been to you 3 times already." Sometimes he can come across as a good friend, and sometimes he can come across as very overbearing. Like, he was also extremely drunk at the time that he's trying to take care of him. He's like, "I have feelings for you, Dunya. I'll try to stay by your side." And it's like, dude, you have a house party going on right now. Why are you not at your party? Sometimes I don't get Razumhin. Yeah, definitely overbearing in a sense. "I've been to see you 3 times. Your mother has been seriously ill since yesterday. She had made up her mind to come to you, but Dotya Romanovna tried to prevent her. She wouldn't hear a word. If he is ill, if his mind is giving way, who can look after him like his mother?" she said. "We all came here together. We couldn't let her come alone all the way. We kept begging her to be calm. We came in, you weren't here. She sat down and stayed 10 minutes, while we stood waiting in silence. She got up and said, if he's gone out, that is, if he is well, and if he's forgotten his mother, it's humiliating and unseemly for his mother to stand at his door begging for kindness. She returned home and took to her bed. Now she's in a fever. I see," she said, "that he has time for his girl. She means by your girl, Sofia Semyonovna. Your betrothed or your mistress, I don't know. I went all out." And something that I think mothers just simply, for some reason, cannot internalize is that a boy's love for a wife or spouse or lover is not the same as love for them. They're like, "I'm the mother, I'm number one, my son should only love and care about me. There are no other women that are important at all. They don't matter. They don't exist. My son will always be a mama's boy." It's like the mother and Waterboy. They're the devil. It's like, okay. Okay, mama. Like, I'm his mother. He will never be able to replace me. Okay, mama. Mama Romanovna. I went at once to Sophia Semyonovna's for I wanted to know what was going on. And of course, the mom always happened to be in control of everything. I looked around. I saw the coffin, the children crying, and Sophia Semyonovna trying them on mourning dresses. No sign of you. I apologized, came away, and reported to Avdotya Romanovna. So that's all nonsense. When you haven't got a girl, the most likely thing is that you're mad. But here you sit, guzzled boiled beef as though you'd not had a bite for 3 days. As far as that goes, mad men eat too. But though you've not said a word to me yet, you're not mad. That I'd swear. Above all, you're not mad. So you may go to hell, all of you, but there's some mystery, some secret about it, and I don't intend to worry my brains over your secrets. So I've simply come to swear at you. You finished getting up to relieve my mind, and I know what to do now. What do you mean to do now? What business is it of yours what I mean to do? You're going in for a drinking bout. How did you know? Why, it's pretty plain. Razumhin paused for a minute. You've always been a very rational person, and you've never been mad, never, he observed suddenly with warmth. You're right, I shall drink. Goodbye. And he moved to go out. I was talking with my sister the day before yesterday. I think it was about you, Razumhin. He actually recommended Razumhin. He's like, yeah, you know, sister, Razumhin, he's a pretty stand-up guy. I want to give him a holler. Trying to set him up with his buddy. Trying to set her up with his buddy. About me, but where can you have seen her the day before yesterday? Razumhin stopped short and even turned a little pale. One could see that his heart was throbbing slowly and violently. She came here by herself, sat there and talked to me. She did, yes. What did you say to her? I mean, about me. I told her that you were a very good, honest, and industrious man. I didn't tell her you love her because she knows that herself. Yeah, I think women have good, what's it called? Intuition when it comes to how boys and men feel about them. A lot of times you don't even have to say anything, like, it'll just come across. Let's see. It's pretty plain. Wherever I might go, whatever happened to me, you'd remain to look after them. I, so to speak, give them into your keeping, Razumhin. I say this because I know quite well how you love her. I'm convinced of the purity of your heart. I know that she, too, may love you. And perhaps it does love you already. Now decide for yourself, as you know best, whether you need go in for a drinking bout or not. Roja, you see, well, damn it. But where do you mean to go? Of course, if it's all secret, never mind. But I shall find out the secret, and I'm sure that it must be some ridiculous nonsense, and that if you made it all up. Anyway, you're a capital fellow, capital fellow. Yeah, I think Avdotya knows Sverdlov's also in the running. That was just what I wanted to add. Only you interrupted that was a very good decision of yours not to find out these secrets. Leave it to time. Don't worry about it. You'll know it all in time when it must be. Yesterday a man said to me that what a man needs is fresh air, fresh air, fresh air. I mean to go to him directly to find out what he meant by that. Seems pretty obvious to me. Razumhin stood lost in thought and excitement, making a silent conclusion. He's a political conspirator. Must be. Okay. And he's on the eve of some desperate step, that's certain. It can only be that. And Dunya knows, he thought suddenly. So Avdotya Romanovna comes to see you, he said, weighing each syllable. And you're going to see the man who says we need more air, and so of course that letter, that too must have something to do with it, he concluded to himself. What letter? She got a letter today. It upset her very much indeed, too much so. I began speaking of you, she begged me not to. Then she said that perhaps we should very soon have to part, and she began warmly thanking me for something. Then she went to her room and locked herself in. You got the letter? Raskolnikov asked thoughtfully. Yes, and you didn't know? They were both silent. Perhaps from Luzhin. I don't know, hard to say. Either from Luzhin or Sverdlov, I'm assuming. Goodbye, Rodyan. There was a time, brother, when I... Never mind. Goodbye. You see, there was a time, well... Goodbye. I must be off too. I'm not going to drink. There is no need now. That's all stuff. So yeah, I got a woman. Alright, Razman, alright. He hurried out, but when he'd almost closed the door behind him, he suddenly opened it again and said, looking away. By the way, do you remember that murderer you know, Porfiry's, that old woman? Do you know the murderer has been found? He has confessed and given the proofs. Here we go again. How many, like, what are they called? Like, false confessions? Yeah, they're false confessions. How many false confessions are there going to be over these murders? Like, so far there have been, like, what, 2, 3 people who've either been falsely accused or falsely confessed to these murders that happened that Raskolnikov is responsible for. Like, he kills 2 people and there's, like, mass chaos in the law enforcement. Like, mass chaos. Yeah, he's confessed and given the proofs. Raskolnikov's like, oh really? Go on. Do go on. It's one of those very workmen, the painter, only fancy. Do you remember I defended them here? Would you believe it? All that scene of fighting and laughing with his companions on the stairs, while the porter and the 2 witnesses were going up. He got up on purpose to disarm suspicion. The cunning, the presence of mind of the young dog. One can hardly credit it, but it's his own explanation. He's confessed it all. It's like, what is it? The, episode of SpongeBob, he's like, Patrick's like, it was me the whole time. Like, what episode is that from? I don't know, I can't quite remember, but I think it's somewhat similar in theme to this. It's the perfect crime. But in this case, it was like a double axe murder, and I have no idea how they're not able to link Raskolnikov to the crime. Like, absolutely no idea. Let me see if I can figure it out here real quick. Yeah, it's season 2. The Smoking Peanut. Yeah. The Smoking Peanut. Same thing. It's like, I never would have thought it was me. Yeah, it was you, alright. You're the one who did it. Even though you have no memory of doing it at all, and there's absolutely no evidence linking you to the crime. You were literally just around that area at the time. The cunning, the presence of mind of the young dog. One can hardly credit it, but it's his own explanation. He's confessed it all. What a fool I was about it. He's simply a genius of hypocrisy and resourcefulness in disarming the suspicions of the lawyers. So there's nothing much to wonder at, I suppose. Of course, people like that are always possible. The fact that he couldn't keep up the character but confessed makes him easier to believe in. What a fool I was. I was frantic on their side. Like, the whole time I was saying he didn't do it. That's because he didn't, Razman. Tell me, please, from who did you hear that? And why does it interest you so? Raskolnikov asked with unmistakable agitation. To my knowledge, the only person that Raskolnikov has yet confessed to is Sonia, and I don't think she's told anyone else. What next? You asked me why it interests me. Well, I heard it from Porfiry, among others. It was from him I heard almost all about it. From Porfiry? From Porfiry. Petrovich? What did he say? Raskolnikov asked in dismay. He gave me a capital explanation of it, psychologically after his fashion. He explained it himself. Yes, goodbye. Tell you all about it another time, but now I'm busy. There was a time when I fancied. But no matter, another time. What need is there for me to drink now? You've made me drunk without wine. I'm drunk, Roja. Goodbye, I'm going. Come again very soon. He went out. He's a political conspirator, there's not a doubt about it, Razumhin decided as he slowly descended the stairs. And he's drawn his sister in. That's quite in keeping with Avdotya Romanovna's character. There are interviews between them. She hinted at it too. So many of her words and hints bear that meaning. How else can all this tangle be explained? I was almost thinking, good heavens, what I thought. Yes, I took leave of my senses and I wronged him. It was his doing under the lamp in the corridor that day. What a crude, nasty, vile idea on my part. Nikolai is a brick for confessing. How clear it all is now. His illness then, all his strange actions. Before this in the university, how morose he used to be, how gloomy. But what's the meaning now of that letter? There's something in that too, perhaps. Whom was it from? I suspect... No, I must find out. He thought of Dunya realizing all he heard about, and his heart throbbed, and he suddenly broke into a run. As soon as Razumhin went out, Raskolnikov got up, turned to the window, walked into one corner and then to another. So though forgetting the smallness of his room, sat down again on the sofa. He felt, so to speak, renewed. Began the struggle, so a means of escape had come. Anyone and everyone is going to have to take the fall, Raskolnikov, for your crime. Like, half of Moscow is going to be in jail because of you. All because you can't take a little responsibility. Huh? You did it. And you're taking pride in the fact that you can get away with it. Gloating about it. Like the Zodiac Killer. Like Nana Nana Boo Boo. Except in this case, Raskolnikov is... well, he's not continuing to do it. He's only killed 2 people so far, and he's not really talking a whole lot about it. The only person he's confessing to is really Sonia. A means of escape had come. It had been too stifling, too cramping. The burden had been too agonizing. A lethargy, the scene with Nikolai at Porfiry's, he had been suffocating, penned in without hope of escape. After Nikolai's confession on that very day, he'd come the scene with Sonia. His behavior and his last words had been utterly unlike anything he could have imagined beforehand. He had grown feebler, instantly and fundamentally. He had agreed all the time with Sonia. He had agreed in his heart. He could not go on living alone with such a thing on his mind. And Sverdlov was a riddle. He worried him, that was true, but somehow not on the same point. He might still have a struggle to come with Sverdlov. Sverdlov, too, might be a means of escape, but Porfiry was a different matter. He's like, how many enemies can I possibly obtain? And so Porfiry himself had explained it to Razumhin. He explained it psychologically. He had begun bringing in his damn psychology again. But to Raskolnikov's defense, Luzhin actually was a bad guy. Like, his sister is definitely better off for not ending up with him, for sure. Porfiry, but to think that Porfiry should for one moment believe that Nikolai was guilty. After what had passed between them before Nikolai's appearance, after that tete-a-tete interview, which could have only one explanation. During those days, Raskolnikov had often recalled passages in that scene with Porfiry. He could not bear to let his mind rest on it. Such words, such gestures had passed between them. They had exchanged such glances, things had been said in such a tone and had reached such a pass, that Nikolai, whom Porfiry had seen through at the first word, at the first gesture, could not have shaken his conviction. To think even that Razumhin had begun to suspect. The scene in the corridor under the lamp had produced its effect then. He had rushed to Porfiry, but what had induced the latter to receive him like that? What had been his object in putting Razumhin off with Nikolai? He must have some plan, there was some design, but what was it? It's true that a long time had passed since that morning, too long a time, and no sight nor sound from Porfiry. Well, that was a bad sign. Yeah, like the dinner party that Katerina had commemorating Marmeladov's funeral, death. That was the last time we saw Lucian, and that dude was just about chased off with like torches and pitchforks. Like everyone was mad at the dude because of what I think Lebeshnikov was saying. Like he planted the money, and everyone's like, "Boo! Get him!" He's like, "Easy, people, easy." Yeah, he said something like that. Raskolnikov took his cap and went out of the room, still pondering. It was the first time for a long while that he had felt clear in his mind, at least. I must settle Sverdlov, he thought. As soon as possible, he too seems to be waiting for me to come to him of my own accord. That moment, there was such a rush of hate in his weary heart that he might have killed either of those two, Porfiry or Sverdlov. Why Sverdlov? Sverdlov has actually turned it all around. Like he wasn't off to the best start with Raskolnikov, but he really came through for Sonia and her brothers and sisters when it mattered. So I would think that Raskolnikov seeing that might have changed his opinion on him, but based on this, I guess not. Maybe he thinks that Sverdlov's like a goody-goody for doing that or something like that. At least he felt that he would be capable of doing it later, if not now. We shall see. We shall see, he repeated to himself. But no sooner had he opened the door than he stumbled upon Porfiry himself in the passage. Yeah, Porfiry probably feels the same way about Raskolnikov, because as we might recall, he is the reason why Dunya broke up with him. He was coming in to see him. Raskolnikov was dumbfounded for a minute, but only for 1 minute. Strange to say, he was not very much astonished at seeing Porfiry and scarcely afraid of him. He was simply startled, but was instantly on his guard. Perhaps this will mean the end, but how could Porfiry have approached so quietly like a cat so that he heard nothing? Could he have been listening at the door? You didn't expect a visitor, Rodion Romanovich, Porfiry explained, laughing. I've been meaning to look in a long time. I was passing by and thought, why not go in for 5 minutes? Are you going out? I won't keep you long. Just let me have one cigarette. It's just like Big Lebowski. Dude. Like, he just keeps showing up at his house. He's like, what do you people keep doing here? How do you keep finding my house? Because he definitely was not invited either time, as a matter of fact. He definitely was not invited this time. He just shows up. Sit down, Porfiry Petrovich. Sit down. Wow. I thought Raskolnikov was going to be like, go on, get. You ain't welcome here, get. Raskolnikov gave his visitor a seat with so pleased and friendly an expression that he would have marveled at himself if he could have seen it. Yeah, I'm just wondering why. Like last time these two interacted was when he was accusing Sonia of stealing and Rodion eventually came to her defense. Yeah, eventually he did. Last moment had come. The last drops had to be drained. So a man will sometimes go through half an hour of mortal terror with a brigand, yet when the knife is at his throat at last, he feels no fear. Raskolnikov seated himself directly facing Porfiry. Looked at him without flinching. Porfiry screwed up his eyes and began lighting a cigarette. Speak, speak. Seemed as though it would burst from Raskolnikov's heart. Come. Why don't you speak? Yeah. Venture a guess that this is not going to end well, but I don't know. Because, yeah, it seems like every interaction that these two have is like two boy mice going at each other. Or two male roosters. Just fight each other every single time. Alright. And, yeah, the Dunya and Sonia incidents are not going to improve relations between them at all. So, yeah, I predict that they're going to get into some sort of argument, fight, or something like that. Alright. And that was chapter 1. Nice, short, and sweet.
just how I like my Crime and Punishment chapters. And what I really like about Crime and Punishment is the narrative. It just like flows. As I said before, it's like the chapters are long, but when the chapters are long, there are a lot of significant story developments that occur. A lot of significant interactions and major events, significant events may occur. Like in this chapter, we learned that someone else came forward to confess about Raskolnikov's crime. And we also had a chance to see Razumhin catching up a little bit with Raskolnikov. And Petrovich coming back into the story too. So yeah, a lot of significant character moments. And in contrast, like War and Peace in 100 Years, just like a bunch of characters. This book, there, dang, bugs. There's like, different names for major characters, like Luzhin for Porfiry Petrovich, and like Sofia Semyonovna, Raskolnikov, Rodion Romanovich, Dunya Avdotya Romanovna. But it's like once you build those associations, it's like you just know, like that's the name, that's the character. And I think that Fyodor has gotten like the perfect ratio of characters too. It's like it's not too many characters that we lose track of who's who and what's happening and what the relationship is between certain characters to both other characters and events in the story. But there are not so few characters that you're like, okay, there's just not really a lot going on, you know? There's not really a lot of character development. There's not really a lot of story development. But yeah, he's got like just enough characters, and they do enough in the story to make it seem significant and relevant to the overall context of the story. So yeah, Crime and Punishment, absolutely love it. We are, I think, almost done with the book. As a matter of fact, 81% through. So yeah, almost there. We may be able to finish it by the end of the year. But we'll have to see. I'll be back with Phoenix, Fallout, and Exercise later. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and thank you for following. Be right back.